Sweet. Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to the podcast that now has a name. We're going to call it United We Talk Podcast, episode number 3. My name is Calvin Corelli. I'm here with my very favorite, very favorite Beth to talk about the world around us, politics, culture, all the big questions that we're often get into fights about over Thanksgiving dinners and stuff like that. And to demonstrate to y'all that you can see very different versions of reality, and you can still be friends and co-workers or family members or whatever it is, and actually learn from each other, and how beautiful it is to learn from each other as we piece together our understanding of reality. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you again for doing this, Beth. It really takes a special kind of person to be willing to do that in this climate. It really does. It's so fraught. And I think you mentioned yesterday that there might be people who are like, oh, you're enabling or allowing or whatever it is, right? Like people get so emotional about this. And I understand. I get it. Yeah. Anyway, so we were talking about inflation.
Yeah, we were talking about inflation.
Prices have gone up. Right. And the inflation rate was high, and then it's come down some. And share what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, what you're hearing. I would love to know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I raised this in an earlier meeting we had and just said, that's one of the things that I see continuing to really be stressful for the people in my community is inflation, and particularly grocery prices. When I go to the grocery store, I experience and I don't know if it's partly my age or what, but I'm like, how is that so expensive? Like I used to buy that all the time. And now I look at it and I think, do I really want to spend that much money for that tub of yogurt or whatever it is? It really is more expensive at the grocery store. And I have neighbors. I live in Ohio. I mentioned that I live in one of the poorest counties in Ohio. So I am grocery shopping next to people who are struggling to afford groceries in a way that I'm not. And I hear people say, put that back. We can't afford that anymore. I'm buying this because it's on sale. There was a gentleman at the store the other day. He had a grocery cart full of soda pop, whatever you call it, wherever you are, full of it. And he was kind of self-conscious about it. And he's like, I'm only buying so much because it's on sale right now. And so I'm spending more of my food budget right now on pop than I normally would, because this is something that I want to buy, but I can get 5 for free or whatever if I buy. Anyway, he gave me this whole conversation about it. It's stressful for people at the grocery store right now. And so that's what a lot of what I'm hearing is fear and concern about that. I hear people blaming the Biden administration, like my neighbors, blaming the Biden administration for grocery prices being high. What I see in the world of media that I consume is people saying the inflation rate is going down, has been going down steadily for 6 months. Grocery prices are staying high, and that's because individual corporations are making obscene profits. Like that with COVID, like supply chain changes, like wage increases, corporations raised prices, but they have continued to keep them high long after that was necessary, and have kind of used the excuse of higher inflation to push grocery prices higher in order to make bigger profits for themselves. That workers are not seeing that money in their paychecks, that it's going to the billionaires.
So is it the producers of goods, or is it the grocery store, or who is
or both? Yeah. I guess my assumption is that it's both, but I haven't done enough research to know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So like a couple of things that I've seen, first of all, there's, several things here. One is how do we measure inflation, right? So when they say that the inflation rate is down, what is actually the way that we measure that? Because there's a CPI, the Consumer Price Index. But one of the things that I've heard that I've not looked into is that the definition of the CPI changed. I've heard something about the Biden administration actually changing it. It's something that's changed over the years. And I've heard specifically that things like food and housing and gas are not included or only partially included or something, which is obviously like a big part of people's spending. So if you include some big categories, then that messes with the number.
Sure.
I,
Yeah.
I don't think it's entirely accurate, but there might be some things there. There's also obviously shrinkflation, right? Where it's the same box, but there's less stuff in it.
Right.
Right. So
Right. Yeah.
that's another way.
Yeah.
And then there's the fact that the inflation rate may be going down, but that doesn't mean prices go down. It just means that the
Right.
prices rise less fast than they used to.
Right.
So like for prices to actually, I don't think you're gonna see prices ever go down again. Like it's just not how that works, right? Like inflation means price. We always have inflation. Deflation is actually very bad. So
Right.
we always have inflation. So once the prices are up, they're gonna stay up.
Right.
Generally speaking, save for innovation and productivity enhancements, right? So cost of computers are going down because we've had a lot of innovation in computers per speed, et cetera. Like the costs are pretty steady now, but like the devices get better and better.
Right.
So yeah.
But it's fascinating because prices could go down. Like prices on things like soda pop could go down, right? Like that is not expensive to make. It's sugar and water and some chemicals, right? Like it's terrible for us. It's not. There's no reason why it should cost what it does at the grocery store.
No, but there's also no reason to consume them. So
sure, but people are gonna. And so like there's lots of things that are expensive at the grocery store that do not need to be that expensive. And so regardless of what's happening with the inflation rate, and I totally follow what you were saying and agree that we need to look at what goes into the consumer price index. And I know they analyze it both with and without food and gas. I think like there's two numbers, and it is anyway. It's a whole bizarre, like set of science. But why don't prices go down, and why are the Republicans blaming the Democrats for high grocery store prices? Like that is clearly a thing that's happening, and that is like trying to get people to vote for Trump. Your grocery bill is high. Got to get Biden out of office. Like I have a friend who's, sorry to interrupt. I'm all fired up. I have a friend who's a dedicated Trump voter. And he said to me, basically, I cannot afford another 4 years of Biden because he has caused my grocery bill to go so high, I can't afford to feed my family.
Yeah.
That is not Biden's fault. I'm sorry. I don't see
why is it not though?
Because it's not something that Biden doesn't control the price of pop.
Right.
That's not a federal policy. That's a grocery store and a corporation changing the price of whatever.
Well, okay, so let's talk economics, right? The way that the allegation is that because the Fed has printed trillions of dollars, that's what causes inflation, right? When there's more money, there's not suddenly more stuff to buy. It just means that now there's more money to buy the same stuff for, which means people on average can pay more for it, which means like supply and demand goes up in terms of the willingness to pay. And that means but the supply is still the same. And so the prices must go up. So whenever the government prints money, prices have to go up. And that's why they call inflation a hidden tax. Because what happens is that whoever gets to spend the money first gets to use that money at the current price level. But as that money flows through the system, prices are going to go up. They just have to.
Yeah, do that.
There's not more stuff.
I don't think I quite got that.
No, but put it this way. Say we have an economy, you and I, right? You and I, and there's like we have $1,000 each. And we can buy stuff from each other.
Okay.
And now I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to print myself another $10,000 so now I can just buy more stuff. And you're like, well, that's great, but like, what does that like? There's not more stuff to buy. It just means that now we have twice the amount of money between us, but the things that we're not making more things. We don't have more houses. We don't have more milk. We don't like, it's all
Hmm.
stuff is the same. Like,
Right.
the money is arbitrary. How much is a dollar? It's an arbitrary
Hmm.
number, right? And
Yeah.
so as you pour more money into the economy, inflation just has to go up by the same amount.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying
Not
to wrap my brain
immediately,
around that.
not
Hmm.
immediately, but over time. Again, the simple logic is you have more money in circulation, but the same amount of stuff that money is competing for.
Why is the same amount of stuff always fixed in that scenario?
No, it's
Right.
not always fixed,
Like if the
but
government is also like getting people to build more houses or bringing more manufacturing jobs back to the US, like we're producing more
no,
stuff.
no. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the economy is not static, but the printing of the money doesn't by itself make more
Sure.
stuff.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
So,
And so,
in your analysis of things, do you think that Biden's policies have caused inflation, caused grocery prices to go up, like particularly grocery
yeah,
prices?
100%. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I mean, the fact that I remember when just a few years ago, and we were like, oh my God, the US debt just broke 10, $20 trillion. How are we ever going to?
Right.
Now it's like 33
Insane. Yeah.
plus trillion dollars. And the
Yeah.
question is where, like, I forget how fast, but let's say that happened over 15 years or something like that, or maybe just 10 years. I don't remember. We can go back and look at it. But where did that money go? Like, let's just say it's like $10 trillion, right?
Right.
Where did that money go? Are you feeling it? Is it in your pocket? Like, where, who got that
Right.
money? It went somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it went somewhere, but I don't think we got it. So what's going to happen too? So here, let me see here. So I found this one that says debt in billions end of fiscal year from 1929, 17 billion. That's quaint. That's so sweet. And so, yeah, 33
Right.
trillion, 31 trillion,
Hmm.
28 trillion. So it's gone up by like five. Well, actually, so end here, that was the end of Trump, right? So it was 27 and now it's 33. So that's $6 trillion in that the debt has gone up, right? And that money is money the government borrows. I don't know if it borrows from China or from citizens via or anyone using treasury bonds, or it borrows them from the Fed by just printing them. I think all of the above. I'm not sure. That would be great to know. But $7 trillion that have flooded the system. And what is US GDP is 25 trillion. So that's, let's say 6 out of 25. So that's like a quarter, 25, 4% of GDP. So I don't know. Does that mean that we should see a 25% increase in prices over that period? Something to that effect, I think, just from straight up economics, right? And COVID obviously added a shit ton as well, which was a travesty. Um, but yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
2016 we ended below 20 trillion. So since 16, so that's end of 16, so that's 9 years. It's gone from 20 to 33. That's fucking insane. It's wild.
I mean, that feels like another place that there is like shared concern across the country. Like nobody
Yeah,
wants national debt that high. That's a security risk. That's a economic constraint.
yeah,
Like nobody wants that. So how do we get from there to where we want to be as a starting
yeah.
point?
Well, I
Yeah.
think, I mean, obviously somebody wants it because someone's doing it, right? So, um, but the people don't.
That's what I mean. People don't want
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Like people who vote like me and people who would vote like you are nobody wants that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So why do they keep doing that? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do they keep spending? And where does that money go?
Hmm.
Where's that money going? Like we know that I think I've seen about $8 trillion were spent on 9/11 wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, right? There's Ukraine, which is I think a couple hundred billion, so it's not trillions of dollars. But yeah, where is that money going? Because so the other thing that happens in when there's inflation is that people people who own assets are going to get wealthy. So if you own stocks or companies or
Mm-hmm.
houses or things like that, again, you own an asset. Now there's more money in the system, so your asset prices are going to go up. So the stock market
Mm-hmm.
is looking great. And if you're in the stock market and you have a lot of money and you're able
Right.
to keep the money there, that's great. But for those that don't have a lot of assets, you're
Right.
SOL, right? Because
Right. No,
all
that's
the prices
yeah.
are going up. Eventually, your
Right.
salary is going to hopefully go up, but also like when the
Right.
grocery prices are higher, people buy less of them, and so that means that
Right.
both the grocery store and the producer of the thing is suffering too, and so like they're going to have to lay off people.
Right.
I was sharing before I was with my acupuncturist and she was like, everybody's depressed here in New York. Even people who make good money, they're like, I can't afford the things anymore and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go out less and they spend less money. And so those businesses
Mm-hmm.
can't afford to hire. And so they get fired. And so they have less money. So
Yeah.
they go out even less, right? So like all this money flooded the economy and we're all poor. Like, isn't that freaking interesting?
Yeah. So it's interesting because like part of that has got to be, I mean, you mentioned the pandemic, like part of that has got to be pandemic related, right? Because people during the pandemic, people were saving money, not spending it, right? There was fear. So people, and then you couldn't go out to eat. You couldn't go,
Mm-hmm.
like, you couldn't spend as much money as easily as you did before. So I
Right.
think I remember reading that people's savings increased. And then as the pandemic eased, people started spending money like crazy. And that is the other way money enters the economy, right? Like it's not just printed by the government. It also comes out of our savings accounts and goes into the economy.
Yeah. I'd be curious because there's also the stimmy checks, right?
Right. That happened. Yeah. During the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was just looking and I found
But they
this
flooded the economy as well, and that was government funded. Yeah.
yeah, but a lot
Savings.
of people
Right.
saved those checks. Like I remember reading about that, that sometimes that those were
Mhm.
intended to stimulate the economy, but they didn't. I was looking, I just Googled like, I forget what, but like Tampa Bay, this is an article in the newspaper. I don't have any idea how credible Tampa Bay Times is, but they talked about, yeah, money being saved rather than spent. Um, and so then like that causes the inflation to go up. Pandemic
Mhm.
receded, pent up demand, huge comeback.
Yeah.
In 2023, the Fed began reducing the amount of money supply that exists
Mhm.
by increasing interest rates. So again, like
Yeah.
I absolutely see why there's a correlation between a
Mhm.
democratic administration and inflation or whatever this is called exactly. But I'm not sure that there's a pure cause.
Mhm.
You know, like it seems like the pandemic has a huge impact there too. And at least in that scenario, you watch that curve, you know?
Well, I
So,
mean, if people save a lot of money and then spend that same money, that's not
mhm.
going to materially change the inflation, right? Because you just it's the same spending. You were just holding it back for a bit, and then it came back, and we're at the
If you
same
started
point.
spending more than you would have otherwise. Yeah. I mean, that's what
Yeah,
that
but yeah, I
is
mean,
saying.
there would be a period where you're like, okay, I'm just going to save my money. So like, I spend, $1,000 a month, and then I take 10 months where I'm not spending, like I'm spending very little, and now and I save, $5,000 over that period. And now I take and spend all of that $5,000 in just a few months. Yeah, that's going to do something, but it's not going to necessarily like on its own cause inflation because there's net not more money in the system.
Right. But
it
I
might
guess,
it might temporarily create some like so I mean prices,
yeah.
supply and demand, right? When there's
Right.
people want more of the thing, like and they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to pay more, prices have to go up until that higher price get other people to make more and then the prices go down again. Like
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so there might be a temporary blip, but then it should come down again.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just finding a graph about that here. Like you're right, like savings rate shot up. Like it's been steady, 10,
Mm-hmm.
15, it's been lower. And then like climbing back up again and then shooting up
Right
and
when the
then
pandemic hit. Yeah.
like
Yep.
really down. But then it looks like, I mean, this one ends in 2020, so I don't know what to make of that. But it looks like it kind of settled again on
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
a fairly normal rate after a
Right.
quick drop and dip. So
I
yeah.
mean, you can see how that like would impact an economy, right? Like that kind of savings and then spending.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
definitely a shock to the system, but I don't
Right.
see how it would create inflation.
Yeah. Maybe
Because
not all by
actually,
itself, but yeah.
yeah, I was reading something. So my one of the books that I never thought was this tome by Donna
Oh.
Sowell
Uh-huh.
called Basic Economics. I read it a few years ago. It's fucking phenomenal. It's actually really well written. I will have to admit I did the audiobook version, but it's really good. One of the things he explained that I never thought about, because there's been a lot of talk about price gouging lately with Hurricane Helene and these things.
Right.
One of the things that he explains in there is why price gouging is actually a really, really good thing.
Oh gosh.
And the reason is this. He gives an example of gas prices. If there's a shortage of gas and the prices don't go up, then what's going to happen is that people are going to go to the gas station, they're going to fill up their tanks, and then they're going to drive home, and that gas is sitting in that tank, right? Versus if the prices go up and people are like, I don't need that much. I'm only going to do 2 gallons, 4 gallons, whatever. I'm going to wait for the price to come down. Now that gas is not sitting doing nothing good for nobody in someone's gas tank. It's still there and other people can get it. Like what happens if you don't do price, if
Prices
the
don't
people who
increase.
sell it are not allowed to set the price, whoever happens to be there first are the ones that are going to get it, right? And the rest are just SOL because there's only so much to go around. And
Mhm.
when the price goes up, what it also price going up does 2 things. It encourages people to be more careful about how much they buy, how much they consume, and only get what they need, which means there's more for everybody else. It also incentivizes people to make more available. Right. So now people are incentivized to. There's another storm. I forget when it was, a year or 2 ago or something, where some people were driving to another city, and then they bought generators, and then they trucked them like a 3-hour drive through bad weather, and they sold them at a 2-3x the price of what they bought them for, and people were really incensed. But the fact is that if they couldn't do that, they wouldn't go do that drive, which is dangerous.
Right.
Like the drive in itself is dangerous, and they also run the risk of buying these generators, and they come over there and nobody wants them, or they get destroyed on the way. The truck falls
Right.
over, or like the rain kills or whatever, right? So
Right.
that's how this works. You take a risk, and because the prices are higher, there's no more incentive for people to get them. And because demand is really high and supply is low, then prices are going to go up. But that's how the market balances. So
Sure.
I'm like, price gouging is actually a really good thing.
Well, there's feels like there's a big difference to me between like a price increase that makes it worth it for somebody to do that journey, like in that hypothetical, versus price gouging. I don't know what the discrepancy
Yeah.
would be. Like what's the factor that we're talking about there? But
And
also
how do
we're
we
not
measure it?
talking about that person, that individual. We're talking about big multinational companies with massive budgets that
Right.
are
Yeah.
raising prices beyond what is reasonable. Like when you think, so I would like the other hat that I wear is as the co-owner of a product business, right? Like my partner and I grow elderberries and we sell elderberry syrup, and we run calculations. We had to buy honey for this much. We had to buy bottles for this much. Like how much can we afford to sell this item for to be able to still make it worth our while? We have not raised our price in 3 years because we're able to still make it work, right? Like we're a small company.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
small. If I
Yeah.
can make it work, Coca-Cola can make it work,
Right.
So it's just a
Yeah.
little mind-boggling for me. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is again the problem, right? Is that um, if the market works well, then people can just choose: do I want to buy it at this price or do I not?
Right.
And then if someone is charging too much and they have too much margin, then like as I think Jeff Bezos famously said, your margin is my opportunity. Right? If you're charging so much that you have a good margin, that's my opportunity to step in there and take that away from you.
Undercut you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the market when
Yeah.
it works. The problem is that when we start interfering with it, and the market, the genius of the market is the price. The price is this brilliant information. Price is really an information piece that says, I'm willing to sell this at this price. And then people can say, I will buy it or I won't buy it. Or they can counter and say, hey, I'll buy it at that price. And then you can negotiate, right? But what it allows people to do is it allows everybody to make the decision that's best for them. And by having millions of people that each act in their own self-interest, things work out rather than having someone try to plan it.
Yeah. So I can get that on a big picture perspective, but
Right.
like I can't negotiate with Coca-Cola or with
No, you can't.
you know?
No, but you can choose not to buy it. And if
Right.
enough people do that, then they're like, all right, fuck it, we're gonna have to lower our prices or do more marketing to make people want it more to
Right.
increase the demand or whatever they do, right? But that is how the market works. What happens often though is that because some of these big corporations have so much power and so much money, then they can buy influence from the politicians and get our politicians
Right.
to do certain loopholes and
Right.
special carve outs and whatever, or regulation that keeps other people out. Like what we want is we want to have not these, like we have these massive corporations that have more money than most countries, right? And they can buy power and influence so easily. And
That's another place where I think the right and the left can come together, is concerned about that. Like nobody that I know on any side of any of these conversations wants corporations buying influence in our policymaking.
No. but it happens.
But it happens. Oh, it absolutely happens. Yeah. Yeah. And I can see why. From their perspective, they're in their self-interest, right? So that's a place where we need government to prevent it, right? Because it's in their self-interest to do that. So they will do it.
Well, and it's in the politicians' interest to do it too.
So that's what we have to change. Whose interest is it not in? Like there must be some politicians whose interest it's not in, or I guess that's supposed to be the role of the court, right? The judiciary, because they're not elected on any kind of rapid cycle. So they're not always facing election.
And the media.
Right. Yeah.
And the media. But if the media is bought too,
right,
then what do?
We get mad and we talk about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, but this is the thing, right? And I think that's nobody has the time to pay attention to this. I think a big problem is that the government has gotten so big. Like when the government is like trillions of dollars, like what is the US, combined government budget? It's, what is it saying here? 6 trillion. Wait. Yeah, it's $6 trillion, just the federal level. That's not counting states or cities or counties or anything. $6.13 trillion in 2023. And that's 1.7 more than they took in taxes. Right? When there's this much money going around, which by the way, 6.13 out of, let's just say 6 out of 25, that's the quarter of the entire economy just goes to the federal government. That's insane. It's utterly insane. When there's that much money, it's so easy for them to hide shit, right?
Right.
Do you remember, I don't know if you've seen this clip, but the day before 9/11, Rumsfeld, you can find this video on YouTube. Rumsfeld comes out and says, yeah, you know what? The DOD, there's lost $2 trillion that they can't account for. We're sorry. We just have no idea where that money went. Oops. The mayor, and it happened again, I think a couple of years ago, that another $2 trillion that the DOD just lost. The former mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, he paid, his wife had an organization. You can look this up. It's all over, or it's in the media. She had an organization that was he was white and she's black, and it was all about improving race relations in New York. Was paid $850 million from New York City to his wife's nonprofit. And there's no accounting of where that money went. They're just like, oh, sorry, we don't actually know where that money went. 850 million from one city.
That's really interesting. I mean, I haven't looked at that stuff to validate your facts, but I believe that you're not making that up. So what's the consequence of that? Like, as a citizen, I would expect my government to do a better job of tracking money. So if it's not, like, what's the consequence of that? Like, where do we, I guess we start, our recourse is to pressure legislators to try to create laws against that, or to punish those institutions that do that. Yeah.
But this is the problem, right? Like, if the politicians are all in on it, and if you're like like Thomas Massie is one of, I think he's a senator, is he? But he's one of the lone voices, congressmen. So Congressman Thomas Massie, come on, are you a senator or what are you? I think he's a senator. But he's one of the lone voices that is actually calling out stuff like this. There's a few, but my understanding is that everybody in Congress fucking hates him because they're all in on the take on this thing, and like he's just making us think about it. And they're like, shut the hell up. Like, we have a good deal going here. Like, what are you messing with our business, right? I think it's just, and they'll say anything. And remember Eisenhower and the farewell address? I'm sure you've heard that or heard of,
sorry, I was distracted. I was just I was just thinking about the trillions thing. Like, I was trying, to what extent is that true that the DOJ has lost trillions of dollars? So my brain is caught on that. I'm like still trying, I believe you. Now I'm like, I'm not sure I believe you. Like, did that really happen? Like, so I was just trying to see what I could find about that, and I got distracted. Yeah.
Let me see here.
So I did. So Reuters is what I've ended up on, and it says that the statement you made is a misrepresentation, but that there is some truth to it. He says our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. We cannot share information from floor to floor in this building because it's stored on dozens of different technological systems that are either inaccessible or incompatible. So he's not, like, to my understanding of that is they're saying they can't track the transactions from one place to another, not that they lost $2.3 trillion. Like, that's very different to me. Like, missing money is different than I can't tell why it was once in this department's budget and now it's in somebody else's budget. It's still a problem. Like, obviously that's a failure of the software systems they're using. Let's fix that next. But, you know, it's different than missing money. That's fair. I remember seeing,
I remember seeing a clip on shut up, on YouTube where Rumsfeld says this, but maybe, the wording or something about that.
That was what he said. Like, that's what this was the September 10th.
Send me the link. I want to see it.
Oh, sure. The Reuters. Yeah. Here.
Yeah. Oh, the Reuters, Rumsfeld did not reveal the loss of 2.3 trillion. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably just found it.
Oh,
it came out pretty fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have, is the original clip in there?
I don't see the clip. I just see the quote once you scroll down below the first set of ads.
Our financial system is 8 decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. Yeah. So what does that mean that they can't track $2.3 trillion in transactions? Like, I'm pretty sure if we got audited by New York State over shit. I'm sure if we were like, hey, sorry, we can't track like $2.3 trillion in transactions. Sorry. Like, I'm sure we'd get in trouble.
It's still absolutely a problem. Like, it's a giant problem. Yeah. Like, that's not okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But so, the problem is, so if we can't trust our elected officials to hold themselves accountable, if we can't trust the media to hold them accountable, what can we do?
Yeah. I guess the media feels like a very big, and also the first thing you said, the systems, but like the media is such a sweeping statement. Like, are
Mhm.
there any media that exist that we can trust that you and I could both look at and be like, okay, this one seems fair and balanced and like they're generally doing a good job? Or does that literally not exist? You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but the question is, so like when I say the media, what I mean is that there are certain, if the New York Times or the Washington Post or maybe like CNN or one of those, just if they get on some sort of story and they just keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it day in and day out, the government's gonna have to respond.
Right.
Right. But if, say, Revolver News or the Daily Wire or, I don't know, like
Something more
some like,
fringe.
yeah, something that's not part of the official
Mhm.
sort of mainstream media does the same, it's not going to have the same effect, right?
Right.
And so that's what I mean by media, like the part of the media that has the ability to set an agenda.
Hmm.
Um, and that it's still very much that old guard mainstream media, in my experience, that gets to set that
NBC,
agenda.
USA Today, New
Mhm.
York Times, Washington Post, like those
Right.
kind of mainstream ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I
the
think that's
rest,
largely true. Although I do think that if enough, like if one independent, like fringe source says it, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you've got dozens and dozens of them that are not entirely, they're not all the same thing, like if,
mhm,
I could see that having an effect too on the government. If
mhm.
like because that reaches, it's part of that's about reach, like how many voters is it reaching total?
Exactly. Yeah,
Um,
and I think also the bubble. I don't know if you've seen these like network graphs where you've got like two spheres, right? And so like it's like there's almost like two separate worlds and worldviews, and so like
mm,
Breitbart or the Daily Wire or whatever can write from here on till eternity, and it's never going to penetrate to a certain
a
group of
bubble,
people. Right?
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like,
Well,
how do we cross that? But if
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, what I would hear in that case is somebody responding to that and saying, well, this is the reason why that's not true is this,
Mhm.
or
Right.
that's probably the same in reverse.
Right.
Yes.
And so if they just never respond, then it
Right.
doesn't exist, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, so I've thought about this a lot, and my conclusion is that it's not something that we can solve short term. It's something that we can only solve by cultivating a generation of, like, creating a culture of integrity and cultivating a generation of people who, for whom integrity is a high, like their highest value, or one of their highest values. Yeah. One of
Yeah.
the stories that I tell in my upcoming book, my tiny book, but one of the stories that's fascinated me is, like, I looked into the OxyContin story and Purdue Pharma, and I don't know if you've been looking at that case,
I
but okay.
not really, no. Yeah.
So I watched a couple documentaries, and there's also a dramatization of the whole thing. And basically, so Purdue made $33 billion in revenue from OxyContin. It has, by most estimates, it got $2 to $3 million addicted to this drug, and about 500,000 died. All right, 500,000 dead. And this might not be just OxyContin, but the whole opioid crisis. But OxyContin is obviously the biggest player. So
Right.
500,000 dead, 2 to 3 million people addicted, and $33 billion in revenue. The way that all happened was that the FDA approved a label on the drug that said that because of the time release of the opium, it wasn't addictive. That turned out to be a lie.
Turn out to
And
not
they
be
kind
true.
of knew it was a lie when they said it. The guy, I forget his name, I have it in the word, Curdy something. The guy at the FDA who approved this label and this drug ends up working for Purdue 2 years later,
Hmm.
being paid, wait for it, $380,000 a year. That's how little money it
Mhm.
cost Purdue to buy a person to approve a drug that made them $33 billion, killed 500,000 people.
Yeah,
And it's fucking sick.
it is.
But this
Yeah.
is how cheap it is to buy people when there's no integrity. It's like that old story of like the guy who asks a beautiful woman and is like, hey, would you with me for $10 million? And she's like, 10 million? Yeah, I would. And then he's like, all right, here's $20. Like, let's go. And she's like, who do you think I am? And like, we
Yeah.
already established that. Now we're just haggling over the price.
That's such a gross story. Okay, yes, but I take your point. Like that, there is something about integrity. Like, can the
Yeah.
integrity of the Purdue guy, right? Like, it did take very
Mhm.
little money to buy that person
Mhm.
off, like in the grand scheme of things, and it devastated so many people's lives. Like,
Insane.
so
Insane.
many people's lives.
And so
That
many
happened.
people
And
had
so,
to be in on it. Doctors and salespeople and these,
mhm,
prescription mills. What do they call them? The like where they just wrote out subscription. Like
mhm,
so many people. But the thing is that when all the incentives are aligned and there is no culture
right,
of integrity, it becomes
right,
so easy, so
right.
easy.
Yeah.
And that, for me, the reason I brought up the story is that, not the gross story, is that there is a like once there is a price, it's just a matter of negotiating. It's either there's
Mhm,
not an amount of money that would make me do that, period. That's
right.
integrity, or it's like we're just
Mhm,
haggling over the price. Those are the two options. And right now we're in like
right.
pretty much everyone's for fucking sale. And it's killing us. It's literally killing millions of people.
Yeah, that's the OxyContin thing is terrible.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it would be
But
interesting
it's,
to try to figure out what creates that kind of integrity in people. Like, how do people develop that level of integrity? Like,
yeah.
what are the prerequisites you need to have, in order to be able to be a person who has that level of integrity?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's something we really understand, like what creates that.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
had when I was living in India 12 years ago, I started working with Gay Hendricks, hired him as my coach,
Mhm.
and he taught me about integrity. And it was so powerful. It was two things in particular that really stands out to me. Number one was we had some debt. I was just gone
Mhm.
through a divorce and
Mhm.
broke. So we had debt, and he's like, you have to start paying that debt back. It doesn't matter if it's $1 a month or whatever it is, but you got to get into the habit of
Mhm.
paying it down. Like
Mhm.
it's an integrity. What he's talking about me about is integrity breaches. Any
Mhm.
one of those integrity breaches is like a hole in your energetic system that just siphons out energy.
Mhm.
And the moment you plug it, all that energy comes back to you. It's
Mhm.
an energetic thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he taught me and my wife a principle that he and his wife adopted years ago, which is to always tell each other any important truth at the earliest possible
Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
flip side, to be willing to always hear the truth, no matter how uncomfortable.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you're out somewhere and you feel really attracted to some other woman or man or whatever, like you
Right.
say that. You tell the
Right.
other person about that, or you do something extramarital or whatever, you tell them about it right
Mhm.
away.
Mhm.
Or for us, even like him saying that and us talking about it was like, oh shit, I'm not sure you're the one I want to be with. And we both felt that. And we both
Wow.
said that. And it
Yeah.
was so powerful to just be like, okay, we can say that and we can still be here and be with each other and love each other. And we don't like
Right.
it's just the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
And it really taught me something so powerful. And I've really noticed it since because I've done things since that was like that was not integrity. And I had
Right.
to go back and say and tell my wife about it, as well as other people in my life, but mostly her. And the difference between being out of integrity and being in integrity is like night and day.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
think, well, what she doesn't know, she can't hurt her.
Right.
Blah, no,
No.
no, no, no.
No.
You're just,
Yeah.
it's like an energetic block between you and this other person, and
Yeah.
it just gets
Yeah.
in the way. And I think what happens is that people do something. I don't think it's an accident. I think was that yesterday we talked about the FBI headquarters right after the brothel got it. Like, I don't think it's an accident that there's a brothel there
Mm.
and that the FBI raids that brothel to get all these files. Because I mean, sex has always been one of the main ways
Right.
to influence men, right? And so
Right.
you have some politician, some member of Congress, whatever, that
Mm-hmm.
has sex with a prostitute, and now it's on camera because there were
Right.
hidden cameras in there.
Right.
And then it's like you send them a photo of this. They did this with MLK as well, famously recorded his phone
Right.
calls, and he had a
Right.
mistress and all that stuff, right? He had an open relationship, I think, or something.
I don't know.
But then you can blackmail people by being like, hey, I'm going to tell your wife, I'm going to tell the public, we're going to tell the constituents. Like, they can break the story at any moment.
Because you're out of integrity. And that piece about like just telling the truth about what
Mhm.
happened is so important for companies, for politicians, for individuals. Yeah.
Everybody.
Because we'll
Yeah.
like humans will forgive a lot. Like
Yeah.
if someone is honest
Mhm.
and in integrity about something, we will forgive a lot.
Yeah.
And be
Yeah.
able to move forward.
And and it really helps if you're the first one to bring it up, right?
Right.
It's not you being accused in the media and then you're like, yeah, I did that.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is better than lying about it. Like Bill Clinton, like the whole like I did not have sexual relations with it. Like just fucking tell the truth and we'd be done,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because what he was in what is it indicted? What is it? He's not indicted. It's what he was impeached for was for lying, not for doing
Right.
it. Like,
Right. Absolutely.
fucking say it. Fucking say it.
Lots of politicians do stuff like that.
And
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and you're so right. Like just say it. And own it and say, hey, I'm sorry, I fucked up. And we're all humans. We all do this. Like
Yeah.
everybody fucking knows it.
Exactly.
And then, but I think what happens is that people get scared of that. They're afraid, oh,
Yes.
what are people going to think? And my wife is going to leave and I'm going to lose my family, which you might, right?
Mhm.
It would be
Right.
totally understandable if
Possibility.
your wife left.
Mhm.
But it's better than losing yourself. It's better than living a lie. And it's better than being blackmailed. It's better. Anything is better than living out of integrity.
Better than giving somebody else power over you. Like, because blackmail is one
100%.
form of that, but there's lots of other ways that people can have power over you,
1,000%.
even without like actually doing that. And so like it's
1,000%.
part of it's about like a practice then of people, all people, learning to tell the truth and be held accountable, hold themselves accountable.
Mhm.
So that creates that culture.
And then what we need that's so important that we're also missing today is forgiveness, redemption.
Right.
We have to be able to say, hey, you did that thing that wasn't good,
Mhm.
but we forgive you. Like you
Right.
can redeem yourself. It doesn't make you, a leper. It doesn't make you a bad human being. We can still love you.
Not the end of the world. Right.
I might divorce you, but it doesn't mean
Mhm.
I have to hate you.
Right. Yes. I don't have to give you that kind of power over me, as well as like to create that dynamic between us. Right. I might divorce you. I might not want to be your friend anymore. I might not want to elect you again next season, but I don't think don't hate you. I haven't labeled you with all of those horrible, horrible things. It's just like, oh, wow, that was a really big fuck up. And like, I don't want that kind of person in charge anymore. We'll move on.
Yeah. And we might find that someone who has the guts to do that. Hey, I slept with a prostitute, and then the FBI came to me and they try to use that to blackmail me to pass this bill. And I thought my constituents might want to know that this happened. Holy crap. That would engender a lot of respect from a lot of people. Right. He also might suddenly become suicidal. You never know. Right. But for as long as it lasted, he would garner a lot of fucking respect.
Right.
And condemnation, because that's the other thing, right? If we assume that this is part of a machinery that blackmails people and that also influences the media, like this person who is like, yeah, I did that and I own it, and is the first one that volunteers it before being caught, then the media might still try to, and the social media mobs and all this stuff might still try to
Right.
stir up a shitstorm. But I really do believe that if they just stand up through that whole thing and stand in their integrity, it's going to blow over. People run out of steam. Like these things
Mhm.
don't go on forever. But
Yeah.
it's scary. Oh my God.
Right. It would be very, very intense. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Integrity. Integrity and forgiveness and redemption.
Yeah.
And the courage to own it when you fucked up, when you did an integrity breach.
Right.
We
Yeah.
all do. We
It's a
all do.
very interesting conversation to think about, like how you could restore, like in that situation. Let's say somebody screwed up big time. What do you do to restore that relationship to whatever extent that you can?
Yeah.
Um, you know,
But
it's not enough just to say I screwed up, please forgive me, right? Like there's a piece of
right.
like I screwed up, I'm never going to do it again. Here's how I'm going to hold myself accountable. This is what I'm going to do. Like how do you repair and restore both as a
Yeah.
personal and as a politician, you know?
I think it depends on what it is, right? Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of the times it literally is like sleeping with, like having a side chick, or seeing a prostitute or something like that. I
Right.
think that's very common. And I think the public doesn't give a fuck. I think it's one
Right.
of, like, if you come out and you're like, hey, I slept with a prostitute. I'm a man. I'm a human being. Like,
Right.
not the smartest thing in the world. It's I think it's a crime, right? But like, so you might get prosecuted. But I don't think the public really gives a fuck. I think it's one of the superpowers of Trump is that we know that he's slept around and nobody gives a crap, right? And JFK as well. Everybody knew that he was sleeping around. Nobody gave a crap.
Right.
So
Yeah, there's nothing inherent about having a sexual relationship with someone that makes you a bad leader, right? Like
right,
the piece
no,
that's important there is the piece about integrity,
the lying
honesty,
about it,
the lying about it,
yeah,
but
and
also the power. Like, are you using your power to hurt somebody else, or is it a mutual consensual relationship? Like,
right,
there's lots of things to be concerned about, but it's not the actual sex that's the
right, yeah,
problem. Hmm.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think what happened, like, if it's just that, like, just, yeah, get it out of the way. The I think one of the things that happens though is that it just goes downhill from there, right? So you did something.
Right.
Now you feel guilt and shame about that, and you start to have this disconnect. Now you don't feel as connected with your wife. The FBI is coming to you, dangling some photos, trying to blackmail you into voting for whatever they want for their business. And then you're like, oh fuck, what am I gonna do? It's too big. So you
Mhm.
do that, and then they're like, well, we're gonna, like, if you vote the way we want you, we're gonna give you some money, and we're gonna keep this story hidden, right?
Right.
It's now you do so, but now you just did a second thing, like the
Right.
bribe,
The bad
right?
thing, another really
And then
bad
now you
thing.
start
Yeah.
drinking and you feel the shame and the guilt, and you like, oh, I can't deal with all these feelings. So you sleep with more prostitutes, and you do, like,
Right.
and it just goes downhill from
Right.
there. And suddenly you find yourself in a like having dug a hole that you just can't get out of. You feel like,
Right. Yeah. And like, even without stipulating the blackmail part, I could see how a politician who had done one bad thing could then start doing additional bad things, right? Like, it's not
mm-hmm,
just the sleeping around, let's say. Like, what if they're also taking money for something,
mm-hmm,
or um,
right,
stealing money for them, or giving money to somebody who they shouldn't have, or like, they're fixing federal
exactly,
contracts, or they're doing it, like, because once one person is out of integrity, like you said, it's this energy leak. Like, they're going to do other things that are out of integrity unless they stop themselves. And so part of what we
yeah,
need to learn as a people, as a culture, is how do we stop ourselves? How do we recognize that we are out of integrity? Like, what does that feel like in
mm-hmm,
your body? What does that feel like in your heart to realize you're out
mm-hmm,
of integrity? It's not always
yeah,
probably all that obvious. Like, something a little, like, I'm not sure I want to be with you anymore. Not that that's little, but it's not federal crime, like,
yeah,
how do
yeah.
you notice that and learn to speak up about it? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And when I was working with Peter Crone, the quote unquote mind architect, what he pointed out for me was that I've had this pattern of thinking I did something wrong my entire life. Right. I left my wife wrong. I built my company wrong. I was like everything I did was wrong in some way. And he was like, none of what you did was wrong. You did what you did, and it had the consequences it had,
Mhm.
but none of it was wrong. And I think it's that distinction where like the wrong is a judgment. It's like moral judgment is morally wrong, or it's
Right.
just like you're wrong as in like you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an important distinction to make and say, hey, none of what I ever did was wrong. I did what I did. It had the consequences it had. One of the consequences was my feeling like shit, like shame and guilt and like
Right.
integrity breach. And when I
Yeah.
feel like that, then I want to do more stuff to like mood alter and change that. Um, but if we can, it starts with ourselves that we can forgive ourselves for everything that we've done, no matter if it was right or wrong. Like, see that the humanity is in it. We're
Hmm.
holding ourselves to an impossible standard. We're all
Right.
human. We do
Yeah.
things that are wrong. And when we realize at that moment, I did the best thing I knew how to do, given who I was at that
Right.
time. The
Yeah.
best thing I knew how to do. If I had been a different person, I would have done differently, but I wasn't.
Right.
I did the best thing I could. And we recognize that everybody else does the same.
Hmm.
Everybody's the same.
I remember that point in my maturity, like as I was growing up, where I realized everybody else does the same. Like I'm not the only one who is trying to figure out what's the right thing to do here, who's trying to become a better person, who's made mistakes and had to learn from them. Like everybody else, including my parents. Like there was a radical thought, right? Like when I first started realizing that grown-ups also didn't really know what they were doing.
Yeah,
You know?
it's crazy.
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what age I was, but I remember like it just blowing my mind of like, oh, we are all trying to figure it out, you know?
Beth, I hate to tell you this, but when you hit a certain age, you get like the card, the punch card that shows you exactly how to live, and then you have all the answers. You got
How much older do I have to be before I get my punch card?
I know, right? I think you're older than me, so I
I'm
don't.
6 or 7 or 8 months older than you, something like
Yeah,
that. So if I don't
yeah.
have mine, that means you don't have yours yet either.
I don't know.
Oh
No,
man.
I'll be honest with you. I don't have mine. Yeah, I was on a weekend a couple weekends ago at like a men's group retreat or men's
Hmm.
thing with something called Mankind Project. What they call the New Warrior Training Experience or something like that. It's really cool. And so part of it was we went through this exercise they call the hero's journey. And for me, the thing that came up for me was this pattern that I've always had where I felt like as a kid, my dad would dismiss me. He's like, "Oh, you're just a kid. You don't count." And that pattern's been with me this whole time. I'm like, I'm
Sure.
50. I'm still waiting to be old enough to count, to matter. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Which is kind of a mind-boggling thing, right? You're like, wait a minute,
right.
how much older do
Yeah,
I need to be before I matter, right? And
I
like,
know.
yeah,
But we
yeah,
can do this our entire fucking lives.
yep, yep,
Yeah. And then
absolutely.
we can be like, oh, the reason I don't feel like I matter is because of you or that person or the Democrats or the Republicans or whatever, right?
Right, yeah,
And it
no,
gets mixed in with everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, when I was started applying for a visa to live here, all of my parent father issues and authority issues and
oh,
all that
sure,
shit was totally mixed into that. My feeling of belonging, like all of these things were part of that whole process.
yeah,
Yeah. The other part, by the way, speaking back to the redemption or forgiveness and
hmm,
like not having done something wrong is projection, right?
projection.
Projection, the
Mm.
parts of ourselves that we don't want to be with. I'm like, I lie, but I don't. I have to be in
Mm.
denial of lying because like that would make me a bad person. So even though
Right,
I do lie, I have to tell myself a story that I don't. And so
right,
all of that, those things that I don't, the qualities that I don't want to be, I'm gonna
right,
see in someone else, and then I'm gonna be really angry, like you're a liar, you're a cheater,
right,
you're like whatever, right? And it's just
right,
such a fundamental human psyche element that it's just part of how the mind works. And so we're always gonna want to point fingers at others, you know, the classic, like you point one
right,
finger,
yeah,
you're pointing at you, right?
right,
um
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally.
but when you're in the grips of that, you don't see it. Yeah. I made
So,
something terrible. I don't know if I should say this publicly, but some years ago, my ex-wife was really upset with me. She was like, "You're being irresponsive. You're being so irresponsive. You're being so irresponsive." And I was like, I, it felt a little excessive. And then one day she came to pick up the kids after they'd been with me, and she was like 90 minutes late, and it wasn't the first time either. And so I just jokingly wrote back and said, "That seems a little irresponsive, doesn't it?" Should not have done that. Total explosion. Oh.
yeah, I can imagine.
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe not the time for
No.
that.
No, no, no. I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's when you're not in it, right? It's so easy. It can be so easy to see from the outside, but when you're in it, it's just like how your world is, and you're just
Right.
like,
It's all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, because I wasn't coming from a judgmental place. I was like, "You're irresponsible," but
Right. You were.
because she has
Yeah.
this judgment on it, like that's how
Right.
it's gonna land for her. I'm not making her wrong for that. I'm just this
Right.
is again how we are as humans, right?
Right.
We have, you know,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We should definitely
Ah,
come back to the conversations around integrity and forgiveness and accountability and all
yeah,
those things because it's really is very essential and it's another place where people can find common ground
yeah.
and
I
also
think it's
can. Yeah.
as I've thought about it, to me that is the number one thing
Hmm.
that's the linchpin. That's the one thing that unlocks everything else.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
then the question is, how do we cultivate that? How do we inspire? We can't force
Yeah.
people to do that. We can just inspire people. We can keep talking about it. And I
Yeah.
think for someone who's grown up in a culture where integrity wasn't a thing, it's like in their family or where, whatever,
Right.
right? It's just not in their awareness.
Right.
It's like if you're just sleep deprived and have been like sleep deprived for a long time, then
Right.
you don't know what it feels like to not be sleep deprived. Or if you've
Right.
never been in good shape, you don't know what it feels like to be in shape. Or
Right.
if you've already had alcohol a few times a week, you don't know what it feels like to go for a month or 6 months without drinking at all. Like,
Right.
you don't know. It's just the world you live in. And I think
Mhm.
integrity is the same. You don't have
Yeah.
a feel for it unless you
Right.
experience it. But once you do, I mean, oh my God, for me anyway, it
Yeah.
was like shocking. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
never doing that again.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
much more than quitting alcohol, much more than exercising. Those things like have been
Yeah.
great too, but this is the
Yeah.
big one for me.
That's the, yeah. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should probably wrap it up. That's definitely worth continuing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I love these conversations.
Yeah, totally. It's a lot of fun. It really is
It's
a lot
really
of
fun.
fun. And
Yeah.
there's something very satisfying about both the exploration of it, like you and I were talking about, like it's just like what can we figure out together, and like the fact that we're not trying to change each other's minds or have to fight about something or whatever, but like what can we figure out and how do we
Yeah.
move forward as a
Yeah.
culture? It's really
I want to go
interesting.
back and I want to go back and find that Rumsfeld thing and figure out what he really said. Like, one of the things that we could do is we could insist that the government only operates on crypto.
Oh my gosh.
No, no, but here, the reason why is the blockchain,
The
right? So
track,
with the
the
blockchain,
records.
there's a record of every single transaction,
Right.
and it's in
Yeah.
the public, so everybody can see every transaction that ever happened, and they can trace it.
Right.
That would be fucking powerful.
That would be interesting. So my two questions there would be, and this is for another day, what be like who profits off of that? Like if that were to happen, is there somebody making money off of having everything go through crypto? Like what are the companies that are handling crypto? Are there environmental costs around servers and all of that? And is there any other way to achieve it that would create those kinds of records without having to make
Mhm.
such a radical move? So
Yeah,
for another day.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna put it on a list.
Yeah, we should start a
Yeah,
list. That's a good idea. Yeah.
yeah. Get the government on the blockchain. Okay. I mean,
Awesome.
transparency is such a big part of what's missing. And again, when
Yes.
the budget's $6 trillion a year, it's so easy to hide shit. I remember, friends, I'll let you go. But during the Iraq War, one of my ex-wives good friends was dating a mercenary, like a for hire
Wow.
soldier.
Yeah.
And he was telling about how he got hired to accompany a like a pallet full of cash, like unmarked dollar bills from somewhere in the US to Baghdad, where
Hmm.
they were supposedly going, but then immediately the money didn't leave the plane touched down, and then it immediately went somewhere else that he couldn't disclose for someone.
Weird.
Just like, you know, it's just when this much money is flowing, it's so easy for all kinds of bad people to get their hands in the
Yeah.
pile.
Transparency, yes, goes very nicely with integrity, right? Because it's like this is how
Yes.
we
Yeah.
make sure we can see who's behaving with
Yeah.
integrity and who
And these
isn't.
people are working for us. It's our money.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. We have this thing where like, well, it's the government, so it's going to be inefficient. Like, really, it's the government, which means it's our money, which means it should be way more efficient than any fucking thing else. Because if it's a
Right.
private business, you can choose if you want to buy here or there. Government,
Right.
you have no choice. It's by
Right.
force. So
Right.
they better be the most freaking efficient thing
Right.
ever.
There's an expectation there. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another
Well,
place
no,
of
it's
common
not.
ground. Everybody wants efficiency and transparency. Everybody, every citizen. When I say everybody, I mean every
Exactly.
private
Yeah.
citizen.
Right. Yeah, except the ones that
Yeah.
are benefiting from the
Right.
brokenness, right? But yeah, again,
But
that
every
should be
private
something we
citizen.
could come together on. Yeah, yeah,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah. All right, I love it so much. So many
Me
good
too.
things.
All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully it
Um.
inspires you to write some more since
Fuck
that's
yeah.
next. All
Yes.
right.
All right. Thank you so much, Beth.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you next
Till
time we
next
do
time.
this.
All
Yeah.
right. Sounds good. Bye.